In his first scene, the Morty with the eyepatch does not say a word. The whole scene plays out over the screaming of somebody else's family. 3 years later, the same character wins an election in the Citadel of Ricks with a speech, and before that, the news called him the cutest candidate in the race. Everything about him fits between those 2 points, and it is longer than it looks. Tonight we are going through all of it. How he appeared, what he needed the patch over his eye for, how the place he took power in actually works, and what he really had against the Ricks. We will go through the wall around infinity, the escape, and what all of it came to by August 2026. One thing about him is more surprising than anything else. He says his motive out loud, directly, in one line, with no mystery about it. But between his first appearance and that line lies 7 years of broadcast. All that time the show held on to a character. The viewer knew exactly as much about as he could see with his own eyes. A boy comes out of a portal, takes somebody else's Morty, and says nothing. I have one rule as we go. I try to keep what was said apart from what was only shown. This story has an unpleasant property. Half of what gets retold about it comes not from the lines, but from the picture, or from fan explanations altogether, and along the way I will show you where exactly that border runs. This is a long one, about 1 hour and 20 minutes, and it is made to fall asleep to. Every chapter stands on its own and is tied to its own piece of the story, so if you drop off in the middle, in the morning you can come back anywhere and lose nothing. To sleep well through a long breakdown like this, subscribe. I put one out regularly. And one more thing before we start. Somewhere in the next hour and a bit, I am going to get something wrong. A line put in the wrong episode, a year off by one name swapped for another. Over a breakdown this long, it happens. Where exactly? If you catch it, leave me a line in the comments. I read all of them and I am glad to talk about any part of this. And we begin with the scene where he is still silent. Section 1. The Smith family is having breakfast at the kitchen table, and the conversation is domestic, unremarkable. Tomorrow is exactly 1 year since Rick came back to the family, and to mark it they offer to make him pancakes shaped like flying saucers. He turns it down, regular ones are fine. Somebody gets a joke in that regular pancakes are already the shape of a flying saucer. The conversation breaks off on that joke. A portal opens in the middle of the room. 2 figures come out, a Rick with a scar across his face and a Morty with a black patch over one eye. The Rick shoots his double in the head. The Morty with the patch shoots his own counterpart in the shoulder with a tranquilizer. The boy goes limp and they drag him through the portal. The family screams from the first second of the scene to the last. Then the title sequence. And after the title sequence, the same kitchen, the same table, the next morning, except now all of it is the main reality and everyone in it is alive. That is the second the viewer works out that the family he was watching a minute ago is already dead. The trick is built so the death catches up with you on a second pass, after the fact. At the moment, the same kitchen is shown in its safe version. And one more thing about that kitchen, easy to walk past. What they are sitting down to celebrate is exactly that the grandfather is in the house. Tomorrow makes a year since he came back. They die a minute later for exactly the same reason. Someone came for the grandfather and for the boy who comes with him. The occasion for the celebration and the occasion for the killing in that scene are the same thing. Episode 10 of Season 1. Aired the 7th of April, 2014. Written by Ryan Ridley. Directed by Steven Sandoval. 1,750,000 viewers in the States. And a correction straight away, because this one is still alive in retellings. It is not the season finale. Season 1 has 11 episodes, and this is the second to last. The boy with the patch enters the show as a matter of routine. In the scene that brings him into the series, he does not have a single line. No threat, no order, no explanation. He comes out of a portal, he shoots, he takes his Morty, he leaves. The only voice in that scene belongs to somebody else's family, and that voice is screaming. What was under the patch? The viewer learns not from him and not in that scene at all. Later, standing in the wreckage, 2 rank and file Ricks talk through out loud how the thing was put together, and 2 words come up in their conversation. receiver and transmitter. The patch over the eye is the transmitter. The receiver is implanted in the Rick's head. That Rick with the scar, the one who a minute ago shot another Rick in the middle of his own kitchen, is a remotely operated puppet, and the one operating him is the boy walking behind. The pecking order in that pair reads at a glance: the adult with the portal gun in front, the child with the tranquilizer behind. The wiring runs the other way, and the show mentions this in passing, in a scrap of conversation between two unnamed Ricks standing over the bodies. None of the main characters makes this discovery. It simply lies there in the dialogue of two extras waiting to be picked up. The practical side of an arrangement like that is not complicated. The adult goes into somebody's house first. The adult does the shooting. The only one anybody notices in that scene is the adult, big, scarred, armed. The boy behind him does nothing worth remembering on its own, and that, to my mind, works for his scheme every bit as well as the wiring does. 3 short lines come later in the episode, and all 3 are aimed at the main Morty. One of them amounts to telling him he has no chance whatsoever against Rick. He does not address the family whose house he wrecked, and he does not address the Ricks around him. That is the whole vocabulary of the character in Season 1. Somewhere along the way, the place they have ended up in gets a name: the Citadel of Ricks. How it works from the inside is a long conversation, and it is ahead of us. For now, it is enough that the name exists. The closing scene of the episode: a crowd of Mortys being loaded onto ships, where they are being taken. I am not going to state. The sources disagree here, and I am going to leave it as a disagreement rather than pick a side. The Morty with the patch walks along with the rest of them. He takes the patch off. He drops it on the floor and crushes it under his shoe. He tucks the wires away so they do not show, and he steps into a crowd of identically dressed boys with identical faces, after which there is no way to tell him apart from any of them. He does not run and he does not hide. He does the exact opposite. He gets in line and ships out with the cargo. There is no conversation in that scene at all, which is why the scene is not in the transcript. A transcript records lines, and no lines are spoken here. That is not a gap in the source. That is a property of the scene. The character came into the show without speaking, and he leaves Season 1 without speaking either. There is music though. From the moment the patch comes off, an instrumental by the band Blonde Redhead plays for the first time, a track called "For the Damaged Coda." After this, it is welded to him. Where he turns up, it turns up. The entry point is chosen precisely. The theme starts the second. He takes the device off himself and stops being the one operating somebody. While the transmitter is on his face, he has no theme. He gets his music at exactly the moment he becomes an unarmed boy in a crowd. 3 lines tossed off across an episode do not draw a portrait. The theme does, and here is a detail worth having. The track came out on the 6th of June 2000 as the 11th and final piece on the album, and it was not listed on the sleeve at all. The show took it on the 7th of April 2014, which means the character's theme is 14 years older than the series. Kazu Makino of the band later said the track had not been planned, and that her memory of clearing it for the show is hazy. Another member, Simone Pace, said that one placement like that does more for a career than everything else put together. Judging by the numbers, he is right. 17 years after release, the piece climbed to number 15 on a rock chart. An uncredited instrumental the band itself half remembers became the musical signature of a character with no lines. And the last thing about this episode: on the 8th of April 2014, the day after it aired, the critic Zach Handlen wrote it up for the AVV Club and gave it a high grade. In the notes at the bottom of the review, he added separately that he very much hoped to see this character again and wanted to understand what was actually going on there. Handlen, note, is not complaining about anything. He praises the episode. His request is of a different kind. The story finished, everything in it came together, and out of it walked a boy nobody explained. The critic is asking for him back so the show can finish saying it. The request is on the record, the day after the premiere. What makes that record valuable? is that it was made before everything, before any explanations, before any theories. And here is what is already in it at that point. The nickname this character is known by today is sitting right there in the text of the review, the day after broadcast. Viewers came up with it immediately and on their own. The show itself will not say it out loud for years. What the viewer knew about the Morty with the patch by then was not much. He arrives through a portal, he operates a grown Rick, he takes the patch off and walks into the crowd. After that, silence, and that silence lasted 3 years. And on the floor there was a crushed eye patch, the wires he took with him. Section 2. The Citadel of Ricks is the secret headquarters of the Council of Ricks. That is how the show itself defines the place. Morty asks what this even is, and gets exactly 1 sentence back with no elaboration. The elaboration comes later from Rick, and it sounds like a complaint. A great many versions of one man, he says, have one problem in common. Their enemies treat his genius as a threat. He lists the enemies on the spot. Galactic terrorists, subgalactic dictators, most of the intergalactic government, so a few thousand versions huddled together. The word he uses for it is herd. One thing has to be flagged here immediately. In this episode, Rick never once calls himself the founder of the Citadel. The opposite comes out. He was offered a seat on the council and turned it down. The council throws that in his face directly, which means they remember the refusal. What the council can do, the episode shows in order. To begin with, arrest a Rick across dimensions on the authority, as they put it, of the Transdimensional Council of Ricks. Jerry gets frozen by a separate command. The procedure has its own clause for the event that a Jerry is in the room. The charge is 27 murdered Ricks in their own timelines, and it is called an epidemic. Then comes the profiling of the accused, and inside it, in passing, a phrase slips by that means nothing to the viewer at that moment. It goes like this: of all the Ricks inside the Central Finite Curve, you are the malcontent and the renegade. The prosecutor says it the way people say a thing everybody knows, and nobody at that table asks him to repeat it. The phrase drops and stays lying there. It is not decoded, and it is not argued over. Hold on to it, we are coming back to it, and the wait is long. The council has exactly 1 piece of evidence. They scan the portal gun. The sentence is handed down before any defense at all, and it is the machine of unspeakable doom which switches the conscious and the unconscious. Then the case falls apart, Rick is cleared, and the council apologizes. The apology is issued as a voucher for a free Morty replacement. A governing body that pulled a man out of another universe, tried him without a defense and sentenced him to having his mind turned inside out, settles its mistake with a coupon for a new assistant. In that accounting, Morty is filed under consumables. Rick's answer to the council is short, and it is the thesis of the whole episode. He says he is a Rick. The rest of them were Ricks too before they put this alliance together. They wanted protection from the government, and they became a government. So every Rick in that room, by his reckoning, is less of a Rick than he is. By that logic, a Rick is somebody who belongs to no alliance, and the very first meeting of Ricks turns its attendees into something else. Protection from power turned out to be a way of starting some. Now, why Rick needs a Morty at all? The show explains the mechanism outright, and it is physical. A Rick's genius gives him a distinctive brainwave, and that wave can be tracked. Hiding from somebody else's radar works if you stand next to a carrier of the complementary wave. Morty waves cancel Rick waves. Rick states the conclusion out loud. A Morty is the perfect impenetrable armor because he is exactly as stupid as a Rick is smart. The entire economy of the place grows out of that mechanism. The consumable part of the camouflage has to come from somewhere, and in the Citadel it comes off a shelf. Mortys are sold. Mortys are advertised. Right there you can buy Morty glitter and Morty insurance. The dome is the same idea in industrial form. Somewhere in the Citadel stands a structure whose walls are built out of living Mortys, and the Mortys in those walls are subjected to pain. The pain composes a camouflage pattern that hides what is inside even from other Ricks. The Rick looks at it the way a tradesman looks at somebody else's work, barbaric overkill. The same result comes out of 5 Mortys and some wiring. That verdict is heavier than any outrage would be, and it rests on the number. 5 Mortys and wiring is a norm he knows by heart. Inside all of this, the main Morty makes a speech. He says his own name and he speaks. Everybody is frightened, but being frightened is no reason to accept your fate. They are Mortys, and they are not defined by their relationship to some Rick. Their fate belongs to them. He is refusing the role that was written for him through the physics of brainwaves. The wave, the armor, the shelf, the dome, all of it describes him by way of the Rick he is attached to. The show then closes the rescued Morty's thread with a line from Rick. By that line, they will scatter to their homes, back to their families, off to school, video games, girlfriends. Rick calls them Rickless, and there is pity in how he says it. Where they were actually taken, the sources record differently. In the episode, this line is what is spoken, home and family. Reference works twice. Write something else. The rescued Mortys were delivered to the Citadel. The discrepancy is not trivial. A popular version rests on it, one in which the Morty with the eyepatch gets inside the Citadel right then in Season 1, along with the column of the freed. The word Heracles will come back. 2 seasons later, it stops being a beating epithet and becomes the name of a cast. Episode 7 of Season 3 aired on the 10th of September 2017. Written by Dan Guterman and Ryan Ridley, directed by Dominic Polcino, nearly 2.4 million viewers, an Annie Award for writing in 2018. Nothing shown in it existed in Season 1. By this point, there is no council. Rick says so in the very first scene. The Citadel is finished. He never approved of it, so he killed the leadership and left the place to rot. How that came about is a separate story. What matters right now is what was left afterwards. What was left is a city. The Citadel has news, anchored by 2 Ricks with numbers. It has a school for Mortys where they chant 2 working phrases in unison. The first, good idea, Rick. The second, I love being your new Morty. Graduation means assignment to a new Rick. The teacher needles a pupil about how many Ricks he has been through already. The pupil answers, 5. 5 is a schoolboy with 5 tours of duty behind him who is still sitting at a desk. The school is not preparing him for life with a Rick. It takes him back there after everyone. There is Mortytown, the district the Rickless drift into. The episode states the cast's diagnosis out loud. Mortys are raised to be assistants, and when there is nobody left to assist, they start hitting each other. The main Morty's line about not being defined by a relationship to a Rick gets tested here. Mortytown's answer is that they were bred for a function, and the function did not leave along with the owner. There is a police force, a rookie Rick cop, a Morty cop for a partner, and 2 mirrored lines run through that pair. Midway through the episode, same as it ever was, Mortys killing Mortys. At the end of their thread, same as it ever was, Ricks killing Mortys. One word changes between the 2. There is industry. The wafer factory runs on the neurochemistry of one happy memory of Rick's, and that memory is his daughter. The girl's only line is that she loves her daddy. The factory owner introduces himself by name and number and immediately explains what the whole thing was for. The Citadel was founded by Ricks for Ricks, to be free. He delivers the founding formula at a plant where the memory of his daughter is poured into wafers, and there is stratification among the Ricks themselves. A working Rick takes the train to his shift. The promotion he was counting on goes to a newcomer. His monologue is short. They were told they were special because they were Ricks, and then everything that made them unique was taken away. Here, the formula comes back to the people who invented it. A few thousand geniuses huddled together so their enemies could not reach them. 2 seasons later, one of those geniuses rides to work in a commuter car and listens to why somebody else got the promotion. And a technical detail, the episode was voiced almost entirely by one man, Justin Roiland. There are 2 exceptions in the credits, a voice-over in a commercial and 1 line from The Little Daughter, done by Jeff Davis and Sarah Chalke. The news, the school, Mortytown, the police, the factory, the train, both sides of every monument, all of it is one voice. That is what the Citadel looks like by Season 3, a city with news, a school, a police force, a ghetto and industry, and nobody left that makes decisions for everyone. The phrase the prosecutor dropped at that hearing 2 seasons earlier is, at this point, still sitting there unexplained. Section 3. The episode opens with the news laughing at the future president of the Citadel. They show him in a little suit, call him the cutest candidate in the race, and end the segment with the words, "What a jackass." The illustration they roll is a clip of his own speech, the part where he says he is going to lose the election. He has no name at all in this episode. He is the candidate, and after the vote, the president. The race, meanwhile, is over an empty chair, and the chair was not emptied by a conspiracy from below. There is no Council of Ricks by this point. Rick is the one who finished it, and he announces that himself in the very first scene, which is to say, the episode opens with a bulletin that there is no longer any power in this city, and walking toward the vacated chair is a Morty in the little suit from the news segment. The first people not to believe in him are his own campaign. The chief of staff suggests he drop out of the race. The candidate says he feels calm about the debate. The chief of staff explains that calm is not the appropriate feeling here, horror is. The candidate advises him to have a little faith. The man replies that faith is not what he is paid for, and reminds him that the two of them are the same age, incidentally. What I like in that exchange is how domestic it is. A man who within a few scenes will be running the station is being talked to like a classmate, and faith gets its first mention here. It comes back from the other direction and out of another mouth. The debate, 5 Ricks against him. The moderator delivers a trap question with a smirk. Displaced Mortys are up. Rick satisfaction is down. The gap between the groups is at a record, so go on, solve that quickly. The candidate answers in one sentence. He does not see a gap between Ricks and Mortys. 3 Ricks interrupt him with noises, not with objections, with noises. And then comes the speech the episode exists for. He agrees that there is a gap, and he moves where its border runs. The gap runs between the Ricks and Mortys for whom a fractured citadel is profitable, and everybody else. Then he lists where you can see it. Zoida Hefeintasip, in schools, where Mortys are taught that everyone is the same, because the school is afraid of what makes them different. On the streets, where Mortys are handed guns so they fight each other instead of the real injustice. In factories, where Ricks work for a fraction of their boss's wage while being identical to him and holding the same intellect. The Citadel's problem, he says, is the people who feed on its death. Homeless Mortys and resentful Ricks are not on that list. He finishes on 3 words, delivered into the faces of the 5 Ricks across from him. There are fewer of you. He is not arguing about justice. He is reading the room, a result of a count. And here, the episode does something clever. The speech goes off camera and continues over 3 other scenes. Under the line about schools, we see the school. Under the line about the streets, Mortytown. Under the line about factories, a working Rick who is at that exact second killing his boss. The speech is still running, and one of its points has already been answered by deed. Straight after the triumph, the candidate fires his chief of staff, and the reason is stated out loud. The man did not believe. The order matters more than the act. The campaign was run, the debate was won, the work was done, and the winner's first personnel decision is made on a test of faith. At the press conference, the first question is biographical. What reality is he from, and where is his own Rick? The answer, they moved so often it is hard to remember. And then a line that at an election sounds like a compliment to the room. He sees every Rick as his Rick and hopes they see him as their Morty. The second question is about security. Is he not afraid for himself? The answer, he prefers to live in hope. He declines fear out loud in front of journalists. A few scenes before, fear becomes useful to him, because next in the campaign comes a Rick in a coat with a dossier. Handing it over, he says, "Faith is no use here. What is needed is fear." So the word the whole campaign stood on gets turned over by the episode itself. The assassination attempt happens at a rally, and the man who walks up to it is the fired chief of staff. The candidate asks him, and this is a distinct grade of composure, whether he has found new work. The answer is short. "Yes," he says, "killing you." The line closes the thread exactly along the logic of the firing. A man was thrown out for a lack of conviction, and he came back with the one conviction he had left. There is a version going around in discussions, by the way, that he staged the attempt on himself and adjusted the vote count while he was at it. It rests on how conveniently everything lines up. The episode draws no such connection in its plot, and the guess stays a guess. The election result is reported by two guards in passing while cleaning up. They are at that moment dumping the chief of staff's body out an airlock. The first calls the win a landslide. The second corrects him. He would not call it a landslide. The count was almost close enough to trigger a recount. That correction is worth more than it looks. I was carrying a landslide one by one speech around in my head myself until I heard those two lines. The episode corrects itself, and it puts the correction in the mouths of two guards busy with a corpse. A landslide would have made him the darling of the station. A count on the edge of a recount leaves him a winner without a mandate, a man who knows the exact number of people who voted against him. And then it turns out the chair was worth less than it appeared. In the closing scenes, he's sitting in that chair under a barber's scissors, and across from him is a room of shadow counsel. One of those present lays out the state of affairs. They do not care who is in the chair, a Rick, a Morty, or a Jerry. They rule the Citadel before the Council of Ricks, and they rule it now. The president asks one question: is it true that this man speaks for all of them? And he asks everyone he speaks for to raise a hand. The hands go up. The ones who raise them are killed on the spot. The episode ends its election thread the way it ran it, with a count, except now he does the counting himself by hand, and the result is announced immediately. And then the episode shows who has been standing in the little suit in front of the cameras this whole time. Beyond the airlock, the chief of staff was dumped through. Bodies are floating. And he's not alone out there, the others from this story are beside him. The same musical theme plays that played at his first appearance, and along with the bodies, documents drift out. On them is a Morty with a patch over one eye, and the same boy taking that patch off beside the rig he was operating. No explanation comes with the papers. The viewer assembles it himself. The last word of the episode, though, does not go to him. After the credits, Morty asks Rick whether he is not curious about what happened in the Citadel. Rick says not in the slightest, and that the place will never have anything to do with their lives again. The man who took out the council declares the subject closed at precisely the minute the Citadel passes to a Morty in a suit. The reception was excellent. On the 11th of September 2017, the critic Zach Handon gave the episode a high grade and wrote that this character was capable of giving the show the thing the show was going to need, a threat outside its hero's own dysfunction. That same day, Jenny Jaffe gave it 5 stars, and in that chair, before any of these reviews and before the airlock, he delivers a monologue that explains both the firing and the raised hands. He lists what a person is supposed to do at a moment like this: pour a drink and deliver a cold, calculating speech with menace in it, about politics, about order, about brotherhood, about power, and he declines to deliver it. Speeches, he explains, are for a campaign, and the campaign is over. Now it is time to act. Section 4. What does he hate them for, exactly? The question held for 7 years, and people still write about this character that his motive was never explained. That is not right. The motive is stated out loud, directly, in one sentence, in the Season 5 finale, and it is delivered so plainly that people scroll past it. He says it to Rick's face: "What makes me evil is that I got sick of you." That is all. No bill for any particular wrong and no revenge, just tiredness. A man who spent 7 years taking an entire civilization apart, screw by screw, explains it by saying he got sick of one kind of person. And that plainness, to my mind, is the whole thing. From an explained motive, the viewer expects an account, what was done to him, when, and by whom exactly. An account can be checked, it can be argued with, it can be conceded as fair. Here, instead of an account, he reports a condition. Formally, the answer has been given, and the feeling that no answer was ever spoken stays anyway. That, I think, is why the line about him never being explained is still alive. The full workings of that wall are their own subject, and we will get there. What I need from his explanation is exactly the part where the motive is audible, and the motive assembles into something unexpectedly modest. He has nothing to say to the builder. The builder is not even named in his words. The whole speech is about the people, the built thing suits. The difference between those two addressees is bigger than it sounds. You can charge a builder with intent. You put this up, you knew what for. The person the built thing suits cannot be charged with intent. He put nothing up, he just lives inside it, and he is comfortable there. And with intent gone, exactly one charge is left, that he lives there. And here is what is never once in those words, a personal account. So Grobitz. Across the whole scene, he does not put a single personal item to Rick. Not an act this particular Rick committed, not the building of the wall. The addressee of the accusation is always the same, Ricks as a kind. Any of them, all of them, each one, by virtue of birth. The man standing in front of him does not receive the charge personally. This is arranged more awkwardly than it sounds. A personal item can be disputed. You can show it happened differently, that it was not you, that you were not even there. Against you are one of them. No such move works. Belonging to a kind is not cancelled by conduct. Any answer a person gives to a charge like that, he gives as a representative, which is to say he argues about details and confirms the main point. You cannot apologize to him for the same reason you cannot clear yourself. In his accounting, the guilt sits on the breed. It has nothing to do with actions. The same optics work in reverse for him too. He tells the main Morty that the sellout Mortys are what is killing him, and then adds straight away that he would hate them more than the Ricks they worship, if there were any sense in it. There is none. They are not to blame. They were bred for this. Here his own measure fails, and it fails loudly. For Ricks, the breed is charged as guilt. Any of them is guilty because he is a Rick. For Mortys, the same breed acquits. Nobody is guilty because that is how they were bred. One foundation under two verdicts, and the verdicts are opposite. The acquittal he denies to an entire class, he issues to another class immediately, wholesale, without sorting, on that same foundation. He does not intend to sort anybody by name in either direction. And here, the story contains something that usually goes by unnoticed. Back in Season 1, another Morty, the very one the viewer has been watching since the first episode, refused out loud to be defined by a Rick. He said it in front of a crowd of others like him. Nobody called him evil for it. That, to me, carries weight. The word evil was issued to this character over his relationship to Rick, over having got sick of Rick. Which means the label was written inside the coordinate system. Another Morty rejected out loud back in Season 1. While you are defined through a Rick, no categories exist for you except good Morty and evil one. The writers have spoken about what is inside him too. Care is needed here. These are a writer's words in a behind-the-scenes clip, not a line from the show. Jeff Loveness, who wrote the Season 5 finale, described him this way: a Zoomer growing up in late capitalism who saw how broken the system is and decided it had to be burned down. Let me flag it at once, I have not heard that clip. The words reach me through two independent retellings, and at that level is where I am leaving them. We have noted the status of the source. The formula itself does explain one thing well. It explains the scale. A person with a bill against the arrangement of the world genuinely will not deal with the tenants one at a time. And a charge by birth comes out of such a person by itself. And there is something it does not explain at all. Exactly the thing we started with. In his own wording, there is no system and no burning. There is tiredness, and tiredness promises no fire. Past this point, I have only guesses, and I am not going to lay them out. The conclusion out of all of it comes to this. The hatred he explains is aimed at no one in particular, and for that reason nothing puts it out. The death of one Rick changes nothing here. The position remains, and the next one will be standing in it. He is not demanding punishment for an act. He is reporting a state. He got sick of it. You cannot refute that point by point, because there are no points. He does not hate Ricks for what each of them did to him personally. He hates them for there being infinitely many of them, for their being right by default, and for the world around them being assembled to fit. That is not lifted by an apology, and he is not asking for one. If you sleep well through a long breakdown like this, subscribe. I put one out regularly. Section 5, April 2014, Episode 10 of Season 1, a hearing of the Council of Ricks. The accused is read out who he is from the court's point of view. Inside that characterization runs a phrase. The viewer is hearing for the first time, of all the Ricks inside the Central Finite Curve, you are the malcontent and the renegade. A council member says it, the prosecuting side, and the hearing carries on as it was going. Nobody asks him to repeat it. No decoding follows the phrase, and the episode never comes back to it. Although the grammar of the line alone tells you a fair amount, of all the Ricks inside is a construction that treats both the set and its boundary as already known. The prosecutor is not introducing a concept, he is using one, the way people use the name of a neighborhood. From that throwaway line to the explanation is 41 episodes and 7 years. A way to run that long for a boring reason. The term is rare. Across 9 seasons, it is spoken in 6 episodes. Episode 10 of Season 1, Episode 7 of Season 3, Episode 10 of Season 5, Episode 5 of Season 7, and 2 episodes of Season 9. That count runs across 8 seasons out of 9. Season 8 could not be checked line by line. There are no transcripts for it. In the gaps between the episodes named, the show lives as though there were no wall around it at all. In the episode where the explanation finally arrives, though the term is spoken 6 times, let us walk those 6 through in order. They add up to a fairly clear picture. The first is a request over dinner. He has a small project that requires manual labor, and there would be less labor involved if Rick would explain how to bring the curve down. The second is a threat thrown after people running away. Today the quality of the dialogue will stop mattering, because today he is going to do the thing he wants to do with the thing with the curve. The tongue-tied phrasing is deliberate. That is the joke. The third is a guess of Rick's down in the shafts. He supposes that what he is looking at are schematics of the Citadel's spatial drive, and that if the man means to punch through the curve, this is not the place to be standing. The fourth is a direct question from Morty. What is the Central Finite Curve? On that direct question, the term breaks off. Rick answers with questions after we survive, and the word curve is not in his answer at all. The fifth is the definition, and it is Evil Morty who gives it. The sixth and last is his own words near the end of the episode, on this side of the curve. The ratio speaks for itself. Rick does not explain the wall once in the entire series. He circles it, he supposes, and he postpones the conversation. The only explanation comes from the man who is at that minute on his way out of it. The word suppose is not filler here. It is spoken by the person every technical question in this story is addressed to, and he is speaking about the structure he has lived his whole life inside. He does not know. He supposes. Now the definition itself. He asks Morty whether he knows what the Central Finite Curve is and answers himself. They built a wall around infinity. They cut off every world where Rick is the smartest man in the universe from all the other infinite worlds. The first thing that falls out of those 2 sentences is the word wall. A curve is a shape, a line with no sides and with no author implied. A wall stands between. It has that side and this side, and it has somebody who put it up. The official name, the one spoken at that hearing, takes all of it out of the sentence. which is exactly why it lay down in a list of attributes back then without disturbing anything. The criterion, the border was drawn on, falls out too. What is separated are the universes where the smartest man is Rick. Where he exists regularly takes that place instead. Even outlets that quote the line correctly in the same paragraph write it that way. And the composition of the set changes completely under that substitution. The sorting is by rank in a hierarchy. A world in which the same man lived his life as the third smartest does not meet the definition and stays outside, and the builder falls out. They built a wall. For the rest of the line, he never comes back to them. And here is where the question closes, the one that arises by itself the moment the word wall is spoken. Who built it is not said out loud anywhere. All 6 appearances of the term across the whole series have been counted one by one, and the nearest thing to an answer is that impersonal they built. The person it is most logical to ask dodges twice in one episode. The first time is about the wall itself. Morty's question is direct, and Rick's answer moves it to later, survive first. The second is about the Citadel. Over dinner, the president tells Morty that Rick practically built the place. Morty asks again. Rick neither confirms nor denies, he changes the subject. Later, Morty comes back to it without any softening. Did Rick help build the Citadel, and does he lie about everything? He does not get an answer that time either. There is an answer in the episode, but it arrives past Rick as an image out of his own downloaded brain. On how the wall connects to the Citadel, the show is sparing. A machine capable of punching through the wall is on the Citadel and is called the spatial drive, which is that same guess with the word suppose attached. And the Citadel has a single portal resource that can be hacked all at once. One of those two things is a supposition. The rest came from elsewhere. Green portals that supposedly cannot cross the wall. A restriction the wall supposedly places on portal guns. A Citadel supposedly built as the machine that holds the wall up. All of that has been written in on the show's behalf. Schematics are not the only thing written in on his behalf. Reference works and a couple of outlets write that the Citadel was swallowed by a black hole. Those words are not in the episode. The fandom note describes what happens more carefully, as a rift opening in space. An astrophysical object bred itself in the retelling, and the next retelling was already leaning on it as fact. Let us gather what came out of 41 episodes of waiting. There is a structure separating infinity from infinity by a single criterion, by where one particular man came out first. Inside it are several thousand versions of one genius, and each lives in a world where nobody is his equal. The title is always with them, because the world was pre-selected to fit the title. The cage here is not about being cramped. Inside it really is infinite. You really can travel it your whole life and never once hit an edge. It is simply that everything where somebody turned out to be smarter has been removed from that infinity in advance. While you are inside and content, the wall obstructs nothing. It starts obstructing on the day you decide to go out. Now back to that hearing in 2014. The term was spoken there in a list of the defendant's attributes, roughly the way a case file lists a registered address. The first time the term appeared in the show, it appeared as paperwork. The wall works as a field you sort a defendant by. About the wall around infinity, 9 seasons say little. It exists. It separates universes by the criterion of one man's primacy. Some, they built it. It was explained once by the person who was leaving it. What lies on the other side, not one of the 6 appearances of the term describes. Section 6. Hanging in the air in front of him is a golden spiral of glowing spheres. Each sphere is a separate universe, and inside each one you can see the same thing, Rick and his Morty, and the Morty is having a bad time of it. This is the entire wall, folded down to the size of an object you hold out in front of you at arm's length. He unfolds it, looks at it, and the spiral pops like a small firework. For that second to happen, a machine was needed. About the machine, the show says surprisingly little. Here is what is said in words. The project requires manual labor. He was afraid he would have to kill every Rick on the Citadel to get what he needed. One scan turned out to be enough. Most of Rick's brain was scanned a long time ago. So Rick, looking at what was taken, supposes that these are schematics of the Citadel's spatial drive, and the word he picks is careful, suppose. The city's portal supply is hacked, all of it at once. The public address system repeats, nobody leave, everybody stay. A computer voice repeats, rerouted. That is the whole text. He named the worst case himself. To get what he needed, it might have taken cutting down every single person on the station. It did not come to that. What he needed was sitting in an old scan of somebody else's head, taken long before that evening. The expensive part of the work was done long ago and quietly, and everything else on the list is described as manual labor. And here is what is shown. The Citadel's portal fluid is retuned. The portals the whole city uses now open into dimensions where nothing survives. The Rick resurrection system is hijacked and switched over to vats with blades. Blood from there is fed as fuel to the spatial drive. The drive's beam strikes the wall and punches a hole in it. About the blood. About the city's residents being processed into fuel. About what the machine runs on. Nobody on screen says a word. Where words do get spoken though, their register is that of a dispatcher. The request not to disperse is the ordinary formula for an incident in a public building. Rerouted is a service note from a system doing its job and reporting completion. The city is being ground into fuel that minute, and what the city hears is a polite request to stay where it is. Where the fuel comes from is worth a separate look. The Citadel kept a mechanism that brought dead Ricks back to life. An insurance policy, a sensible thing for a city like that to have. It was hijacked and turned the other way round, and the place where a Rick was brought back became the place a Rick is fed into. Another Rick tries to leave the Citadel by that same route, and his exit is intercepted the same way. Before going out, he puts the patch over his eye, the same one from season 1, the one he came into the show wearing. Nobody around him reacts to it, and no explanation follows. Then or later, the way I read it, a man who took an entire city apart for the sake of one hole in a wall goes out through it, looking the way he looked the first time anyone saw him. Then he passes through the breach and finds himself in the space between universes. He unfolds the hologram. He takes out a golden portal gun, opens a golden portal and leaves. The portal closes behind him. The only thing he unfolds out there is a picture of the place he left. The spiral of spheres is an inventory of what has been left behind, and the only difference between the spheres is which Rick is in it and which Morty. He holds it in front of him for exactly as long as it takes to pop. Beyond the wall, nothing is shown. No world, no horizon, nobody waiting. Where the golden portal leads, the viewer never learns. Reference works put it plainly, an unknown destination. From the breach to the end of the episode, he does not speak a single word. The question that ran through this whole story, what is out there, closes like this. It does not. The show walked its character to a door, opened it, closed it behind him, and showed nothing from that side. The promise of an answer was there. The answer was not. Versions that named the place he went, to begin exactly where the episode ends, a golden portal closed behind him and an unknown destination. Everything past that is viewers filling it in, and it has nothing to do with the show. Nobody destroyed the wall. A hole was punched in the wall, and the man went out through it. He said in so many words that he was leaving it. What was destroyed that evening was the Citadel, and the hole stayed. Episode 6 of Season 6 aired the 9th of October 2022 in the cold open and new sticker runs, and it reports that the mysterious rift is still there, has not gone anywhere, and is probably important. The show set itself a reminder with that ticker, and the tone of the reminder is exactly the tone people use about a bag left behind in the kitchen. Let me flag straight away the level everything that follows rests on. The wall is never named here. The new sticker says mysterious rift, and the conversation that is about to happen says your little interdimensional rift. that this is that breach is known from outside the episode. A reference work writes Multiverse Rift. Fandom texts write outright about the rift in the wall. I am not raising the identification any higher than that. The dinosaurs Rick saved turn up, and in gratitude they offer to patch the interdimensional rift while they are at it. The phrase, "while they are at it," is not decoration here. That is exactly how it is offered, in passing, on top of the main job, since they are fixing things anyway. Rick refuses in plain words. "No," he says, "leave it. I know how to close that. It is there for a reason. It is very canon." Morty asks again, "Does he not want the rift closed?" Rick snaps at him. The dinosaurs explain that it is okay to be upset, and they fix it. Rick's reaction is unprintable. After that, the show behaves as though there had been something to fix. In episode 5 of season 7, aired the 12th of November, 2023, the wall is intact and is spoken about as existing. More than that, by this point, Rick himself is shaking it, and the one asking him about it is Evil Morty. In season 9, the wall is in place too. The arrangement there is curious. The wall is undamaged and working, and the person finding out what is happening to it is the one who once went straight through it and shut the door behind him. You can put it together like this. The escape fully succeeded. The barrier was breached. The way out was found. The portal was opened and closed behind him. What cancelled the victory was not a pursuit and not another genius outcalculating him. It was cancelled by a visit from polite creatures who tidied up while they were there. The hologram popped in his hand like a small firework. The wall did not pop. He punched one hole in it, and a season later that hole was patched as a gift, neatly, and against an explicit refusal. The hole was in nobody's way. There was simply an upset Rick standing nearby, and it is okay to be upset. Section 7. Directly with each other, Evil Morty and Rick speak exactly 4 times in the entire history of the show, and all 4 fit inside one episode. Episode 10 of Season 5, aired the 5th of September, 2021. By overall count, it is the 51st, written by Jeff Loveness and Scott Marder, directed by Jacob Hare. That night, it was shown as a single hour-long block together with Episode 9. And this character is not in Episode 9 at all. 7 years of waiting resolve into 4 conversations inside 1 hour. The first of them is dinner. Rick is on the Citadel because Morty brought him there and talked him into staying at the table. The president sits down between them. Morty tastes Rick's food for poison. Rick announces in advance that he will leave the second his host reveals himself as a villain. The host answers almost socially. He hates Rick's every day, but for this particular one he moved his schedule, and he very much hopes the man is not planning to blow the place up again. Rick promises not to blow it up, provided nobody tries to hold him there. Then comes the request, a small project, manual labor, and it would go a great deal faster if Rick would just tell him something himself. A countdown starts, and then he announces that help would have been very welcome, as he had warned. But now he seems to have everything he needs and asks to be allowed to check. Rick objects on timing. "You do not scan a whole brain," he says, "over appetizers." The answer comes back short. "Most of your brain," he tells Rick, "was scanned a long time ago." Recognition arrives through one name. Rick says it, Evil Rick. Morty adds that they kicked his ass back then. The president likes the name, he says so, and moves straight onto egos that get big enough to grab hold of and steer like a joystick. Morty apologizes. He was the one who vouched for the host. Rick came at all because he asked. The apology gets no comfort in return. What he hears is that the sellout Mortys are what is killing him, but no guilt attaches to them because they were bred for it. The second scene begins with a screwdriver. Rick remembers that the screwdriver is literally in his hand and has been there the entire time, incidentally, and kills the force field. Nobody tries to stop him. "Let him go," the president says. "He is the Rickest Rick there is, and they will not be seeing him again." Rick reaches a portal and finds the portal retuned. He checks it in his own way. He shoves a guard into it. Blood comes back out, And here comes the one line of the evening in which Rick acknowledges somebody else's work. He knows only one person who has ever hacked his portal gun, and he names him Evil You. On his way out, he is told you cannot outrun your past, and asked whether he genuinely thought the force field would not come on a second time. Rick answers that he was expressing disapproval of the man's dialogue. A person has just discovered that the way out has been rebuilt into a way to die, and what he offers is a note on the quality of the writing. The third scene is the drive chamber, a dark hall. The lights come up all at once, and the president is standing inside a glass capsule. Rick shoots. The bullet bounces off the glass. He carried Morty here in his arms. And here comes Rick's only substantive objection in the whole episode. He is not responsible for every Rick who went bad. The answer takes 2 lines. The first, that is what literally all of them say. The excuse is preloaded in every one of them, built into the very arrangement they live in, where nobody ever has to answer for anything, while everybody gets to walk around as a victim. The second is Rick, mimicked. Oh, it is so hard being a genius. Maybe your Ricks should just die. After that, to the end of the scene, Rick says nothing in his own defense. Now let us add up everything he said that evening. A warning that he would leave the moment his host revealed himself as a villain, which is a rule of the genre. The remark about brains and appetizers, which is about timing. A promise not to blow up the station, which is a term of a deal. Disapproval of the dialogue, which is a review. The words about the portal gun, which are an assessment of somebody else's work, plus a shot that bounced, and one argument, broken across 2 lines. The asymmetry here is not even about who out-argued whom. What was brought to that dinner is a coherent system in which the dodging of responsibility is built into the construction and therefore belongs to all Ricks at once and stops being anyone's personal trait. What that system got back all evening was commentary on the manner in which it was delivered. The fourth scene is the offer. He invites Morty to come with him and adds that Morty should not blame him if he stays. And here is the thing people usually scroll past. Rick advises Morty to take it. He has no plan of his own, he says so himself, and there is one offer on the table and it belongs to somebody else. A man who has been taken apart all evening recommends that his grandson leave with the person taking him apart. Morty stays. He lifts the fallen beam off Rick and drags him out. Rick thanks him and says he is glad the advice was ignored. And here is where Morty needs saying separately. He is not a witness, he is the cause. His actions move this evening, and without every one of them, there would be no evening. He brought Rick to the Citadel and talked him into staying for dinner. He vouched for the host. He would not let Rick get up from the table. He said he wanted to know what this was even about. He asked the direct question about the wall, and Rick did not answer it. He took a scan in the neck. He forced Rick to hand over the downloaded brain by announcing he would go no further without straight answers. And he stayed when both sides at once had offered him a way out. And the last one, he asked about the crows, whether Rick really left them for his sake or came back because he had been abandoned himself. Rick turns away and says nothing. Dan Harmon, in an official behind-the-scenes clip, describes the point of the whole finale like this: to move Rick and Morty's relationship towards slightly more trust and to see what trials you can throw at 2 people who are willing to work together. There is no ideology in that description for the show's own creator. A collision of systems is filed under trials for the pair. The episode itself divided opinion and divided it noticeably. At Den of Geek, the review was written by Joe Matar on the 6th of September 2021. In the subheading, he called the episode brilliant and admitted in the same breath that he had no idea what was going on. Further down the text, that the show continues not to be funny and he did not laugh once. That more lore is packed into this episode than into any before it. I was frankly bewildered. And separately, that the chills he got from the familiar musical theme were more of a Pavlovian response earned by the character's previous appearances. At Variety, the same day, LaToya Ferguson wrote the opposite. By her reading, the point he makes is a fair one. He is considered evil for having got sick of Rick, and that feeling is perfectly understandable. And in the end, he breaks the toxic cycle in the only way actually available to him. Both reviews came out on the 6th of September about the same episode. He took his seat at the very start between the two of them. By the end of the evening, the seating reads like a schematic. Everything that shifted in that hour shifted through Morty, and for that whole hour Morty was sitting within his reach. The president did not extract a single straight answer from Rick all evening. Morty extracted silence from him with one question about crows. So which of those two was actually running the conversation? Section 8. It is standard to say about this character that he is smarter than anyone in the show. Let me object right away. He does not say in a single episode that he is smarter than all the Ricks. I went through the lines. All of them except Season 8, which has no transcripts. The superlative is spoken in the show, but it is attached to somebody else, to Rick. When the character explains what the wall around infinity is, he describes what has been separated like this, all the infinite universes where Rick is the smartest man in the universe. The title holds up to the fence. The worlds beyond it were not selected on that criterion. There is an awkward thing here. If the fence was put up by the rule Rick is on top here, then the smartest inside it is a property of the fence itself. That measure can only be applied to whoever was selected inside, and it is applied to exactly one man. The question this part started with does not go away because of that turn. The instrument is simply taken away from it, and no other instrument exists in this show. The standard of intelligence here is Rick, and an entire station is assembled out of him. The claim: this Morty is smarter than all the Ricks, therefore turns into a claim about the standard. It says the standard failed somewhere. A conversation about Morty quietly becomes a conversation about Rick, and it happens every time. The closest anything gets to the disputed claim is said outside the show. Ryan Ridley, who wrote the election episode, described him in a behind-the-scenes clip as a Morty who is a step ahead not only of our Rick but of all Ricks at once. That is a creator's assessment. The man who wrote the episode is telling you who he was writing. Plot cannot verify an assessment like that. The plot is what produced it. In the same place, Ridley specifies what he is praising. This Morty says the right things in order to steer a whole station of genius scientists and take absolute power. The praise comes out narrow. It is about the ability to say the needed thing to the needed room, and only about that. That ability is tested by results. The results are in the show, and it does not lead straight to the question of who here is smarter. I keep creators' assessments in a separate pile in general. They are issued by people who know things about a character that are not in the episodes, and what they describe is their intention. Whether the intention matched what came out is a different question, decided by different means. The titles around him are uneven beyond that too. Reference works call him the show's main antagonist. Justin Roiland in 2017 put it more carefully, a cool new antagonist, and that is all. Some outlets call another Rick the real opponent of Rick. The showrunner in 2026 describes his job in the show as the work of an agent of chaos. The formulations differ, and the word smart is in none of them. All of them are about the post, what he serves the plot as, whose side he takes, which hole he fills. When the titles are handed out, no abilities are handed out with them. The title, then, is issued to him from the outside, and it is a different one each time. From the inside, only what he did can be checked. Here is that account. The scan of Rick's brain was made long before that dinner on the Citadel. The value here is in the interval. Years lie between the scanning and the minute the scan was needed, and for all of that time the owner of the brain noticed nothing. Exactly one person has ever hacked Rick's portal gun, and Rick admits it himself. I would set that line apart. It is spoken by the man who serves as the show's standard of intelligence. It is spoken at a moment when it does him no good, and it concedes an exception that applies to him. He won an election with 5 Ricks against him at once. A separate figure here is Rick Prime, and we will get to him. That encounter belongs in this account, and it belongs in it heavily. Almost everything in this account consists of moves made before the other side knew a game was on. Live improvisation has one entry, the debate, where one sentence was enough for him. There are also entries in this account you cannot put under the claim. The election. The win is announced as a landslide and immediately corrected. The count was almost close enough to trigger a recount. He won against 5, and he won narrowly. He outplayed them, survives that. He is smarter than all of them, survives it less well. A gap in intelligence of that size does not usually produce narrow results. Season 9. He is arrested, and the arrest is set up ahead of him. Rick tipped off the police in advance. The tip went in before he had started, which means he was outmaneuvered by the exact method he had been using all along, a move made before the game began, and the showrunner's words. Scott Marder, in August 2025, said he could not lie and claim to have a 30-year plan for this character. That is said about the finite horizon of his own planning, and there is nothing lazy in the admission. It has no bearing at all on the character's intelligence. I include it in the account because the claim he is smarter than everyone is usually rested on exactly the reach of his plan, and the man responsible for the plans denies the reach. The claim itself runs into something simple. To call him smarter than all Ricks, you have to compare him with all Ricks. There are thousands of them, and a countable few have appeared in the show. I have nothing to check this with, and here I am obliged to say the thing that hits me. This entire breakdown stands on one assumption, that the character was not designed. He was made for one use, and they came back to him because they owed the viewer a resolution. Now lay the account I have just read out into a single line. The eyepatch appears in April 2014. The explanation arrives in September 2021 in the Season 5 finale, and that explanation rests on work done long before it. 7 years between 2 points, and everything inside them lines up. Then the line continues. In November 2023, the clothes change before Rick decides to take his grandson along. That does not look like improvisation, not on any stretch of it. I can say that joining up ready-made points after the fact is not hard, except that the piece was planted inside somebody else's head in the episodes in advance, and they came back for it at exactly the moment it was needed. Whatever the writer's room was doing, inside the show the plan holds. It holds everywhere it can be checked at all, and that works against everything I have been saying up to now. That dinner table line about the scanned brain has a tail, and in retellings the tail is the first thing lost. Rick is told the work was done long ago, and then half a line more, in passing, in the tone people use to pass the salt. You probably do not remember, Rick. Section 9. Do what you want, kill me. That is what the Rick with the scar on his face, the one who has walked around on wires, shouts to a crowd of Mortys. The ones beating him at that minute are those same Mortys. They grant the request. This happens in Season 1. The boy with the patch is not on the list of killers. He is not the one who killed that Rick. He did something else to him, and that something else is where all of this starts. The argument about what is inside this character always runs into one fog. Was he broken, or did he grow into this? The show supplied material for both versions, and he supplied it in a single scene. The origin was shown late, in the cold open of Episode 5 of Season 7, November 2023. Not much is known from it, and the order of that little matters. He is from his own dimension. He had his own Rick, and then comes what he did to that Rick. He got him drunk, he attacked. He implanted a control device and hid it under an eyepatch. The Rick stayed alive. That is the very Rick with the scar who in Season 1 walks out of a portal and shoots his double in the head. Walking, functional, with a receiver in his head and an operator behind him. It starts, note, with a bottle. The phrase got him drunk requires presence. You can only drink somebody under the table if he is drinking beside you and suspects nothing of you that evening. The boy sat there until the required condition was reached. The attack comes afterwards on a man already prepared. A corpse does not have to be fed, hidden, hauled around and kept in working order for years. The living option has its own price, and part of that price he wore on his face. The control device is hidden under the eye patch on him. The other end of the leash is fastened to the operator, and the arrangement survived into Season 1 in working condition. The Rick with the scar comes out of that portal functional, which means time passed between the evening with the bottle and that stranger's kitchen, and for all of that time, an adult walked beside the boy, switched over to a control panel. This is not one night's work. The charge he brings against the Ricks is known word for word. To them, a Morty is a consumable part, and that is exactly what Mortys were bred for. It is said about a whole class in the tone people use to read out a factory specification, and his own story opens with him making a part out of a Rick, not in a figurative sense. A receiver in the head, a transmitter on the face, a hand on the controls, and that is stronger than anything he says out loud. A person whose entire grievance against Ricks is that they treat boys as equipment began by assembling equipment out of a Rick. The same wires, the ends swapped, which is why the fork reads in both directions and both directions hold. If he repeated what was done to him, what we have is a boy who got out from under somebody's hand and immediately built himself the same hand. Then his speeches about a broken system turn out to be a description of the system from the inside, made by one of its products. The product knows the workings, because that is how it was assembled. If he arrived at this on his own, then what we have is somebody who looked at the arrangement of his own life from outside and moved himself to a different position within it. That reading grants him no special standing, and he does not ask for any. He speaks about himself as though there were nothing exceptional in his case. Sooner or later, by his account, everyone becomes this. That is how a man phrases it who considers himself an ordinary instance. The word he explains himself with entirely fits here too. What makes him evil, by his own formulation, is that he got sick of Rick. Got sick of is a phrase that describes boredom. It does not describe wounds. A man who is asked what is wrong with him and answers "I got tired of it" is refusing the role of the injured party and at the same time shutting off his listener's option to sympathize. The Rick with the scar has an ending of his own. He died later and not at the boy's hand. He was beaten to death by the freed Mortys, and before that, he asked them for it himself. A puppet capable of asking for death is a device with its consciousness intact. The boy took control of the body and left the rest where it was. The reading is this: a control panel drove him towards somebody else's ends, and on his own behalf he managed to say one thing, which was to be stopped. The construction the boy assembled over an evening with a bottle was taken apart by a crowd of boys just like him, with their hands, and not one of those hands was his. 9 years later, the line I opened with is spoken a second time, in that same cold open of Season 7, the one showing where the boy with the patch came from. This exact sentence stands. The death of the operated Rick and the scene explaining the origin of the one who operated him are stitched together by a single sentence. In 2014, the viewer heard a throwaway villain screaming as he is finished off at the end of an episode. In 2023, the same sentence turned out to be the beginning of the whole story. The first scene changes retroactively because of it. What was the end of one character for 9 years turns out to also be the beginning of another. A scene like that only works on somebody who remembers the first scene. Whoever does not remember hears a scream and loses nothing in the plot because the plot does not need the rhyme. There is one more thing, adjacent to psychology rather than inside it, and audible immediately. Up to the Season 5 finale, he was voiced by Justin Roiland. From Season 7, by Harry Belden, the same person who voices the main Morty. Since 2023, both boys are spoken by one voice, and telling them apart is now a matter of manner. For a conversation about psychology, this is not a trifle. Two boys whom this entire breakdown keeps pulling toward opposite poles are spoken by one man, and they therefore sound the same. Everything that separates them by ear is intonation and the content of the lines. Belden has spoken about the relationship between those two. In an interview with the journalist, Grant Hermans for Screen Rant on the 25th of May, 2026. Rick, by his account, takes part in their shared business plainly against his own will. At the same time, Rick has acquired somebody he can discuss theories with and talk about science in a way that does not work with anyone else. And there is, Belden adds, a grudging respect between them. Those are an actor's words about his own work, and I am not passing them off as a line from the show. For the fork we started with, they still mean something. Respect is not what you feel toward equipment. Equipment gets adjusted, repaired, and written off. It does not occur to anybody to discuss science with it. A boy who started with wires and the transmitter under a patch has reached a position where people talk to him. Both versions, though, stand on the same set of actions: the drink, the attack, the device under the patch. The shared voice and the reused line add details to that set. Each detail works both ways, and this character has to be examined with both versions in hand at once. Section 10. Rick Prime. That is the name of the Rick who killed our Rick's wife Diane and daughter Beth. He is also our Morty's blood grandfather. In the official behind-the-scenes clip for the episode, they stop on that revelation separately. The boy we have been following this whole time is the grandson of the very Rick who killed Diane. A clarification is needed next, or there will be confusion. There are two Ricks with this name in the show, and they are different figures. One is Diane's killer. The other is a Council of Ricks member from Season 1. Spoken lines attach the name only to the first. It is first said out loud in Episode 10 of Season 6, and across the whole show there are two such episodes. The same caveat as before applies here. Season 8 is barely covered by transcripts, and I have not gone through it line by line. For the second figure, the name is held in place by reference works and fandom. The Russian fandom wiki separates the two by word order. That order was invented by the fandom. It is not confirmed by any dub, and I am not going to lean on it. From here, I distinguished them by description, and what follows is only about Diane's killer. About him, the show reports one thing that sets the scale immediately. He and our Rick are the only two Ricks who invented portal travel themselves. He lays out his motive personally in a recorded message. Let me retell it. If you are watching this, Prime says, then you are me, only worse. But you carried yourself as though you were better. So he killed Diane, partly to destroy the person he is addressing. Mostly so, he would only have to record one message. A woman is erased from every universe across the whole of infinity by a weapon her killer refused to name. Too cool, in his words, to be named. And the reason he calls the main one is economy of recording. One message instead of a great many identical ones. He finishes by transferring the blame. The person listening is the one who forced him to use it on her. In person, at their meeting, he adds a technical update. He has improved the device since. The new version fires more than once, and now the family can be erased one at a time until Rick learns his lesson. Rick will not learn the lesson. Prime says that part himself, in which case he will kill him too. And one detail against that whole account. Hearing the voice of the ship's artificial intelligence, Prime remarks that it sounds like their wife. The pronoun he picks is the shared one. The two of them meet in Episode 5 of Season 7, the 12th of November, 2023. Evil Morty prepares in advance. He swaps clothes with Morty, plays out for Prime a meeting with the real grandson, and paralyzes him. Then he burns out the backup copies. Then he downloads the weapon's schematics. A correction is needed here, because a discrepancy is in steady circulation. Reference works write that he left with the device itself. In the spoken lines, it is only the schematics. The difference is practical. A finished weapon is a thing you use today, and a schematic is work that has to be done again from the beginning and in full. I am sticking to the lines. The introduction is brief. Prime says that all of this is very strange, and that they are obviously both trying to kill each other and calls him a cool grandson. The answer, lousy grandpa. Seeing the burnt copies, Prime compliments him. Smart, he says. So you are like an evil Morty and a bright one. and immediately offers him a job to be like Batman and Robin. The answer is short, I do not need a Robin. Prime is offering a pair, and with the same sentence he assigns the places in it. Robin is the junior. Then the immobilized Prime starts warning Rick. He conducts the conversation as a Rick with a Rick. The kid has the weapon schematics. This has to be nipped in the bud. He's 14 and he tells Rick about what happens the next time the kid gets angry at Grandpa. A man who erased a woman from infinity to save himself a second take gives a piece of safety advice a minute before his own death. It is sound advice. It has no effect whatsoever on what happens. By that minute, the work is finished, copies burned, schematics downloaded, nothing left to bargain over. He brings Rick round and hands Prime to him. Why, I do not know. Rick does the killing, beats him to death with his hands. Evil Morty stands beside them and permits it. Prime bargains before he dies. First, you are welcome, by the way, for a service nobody asked for. Then he lays out his account. I made you, he tells Rick. I showed you infinity, and look what you did with it. Hung around with my grandson, raised echoes of my daughter. What even is your life without me? Rick answers him shortly, let us find out, and then Prime demands an admission. You would have become me, he says. I just walked into your garage before you walked into mine. But in the end you did walk in, you lived in my house. That is the last thing he says. Now let us set the two of them side by side. First, Prime killed in order to destroy and spoke about convenience out loud. One message instead of many. Second, Evil Morty left his Rick alive and made a tool out of him. Third, Prime offered an alliance and heard a refusal. Fourth, Prime presented his account personally and by name to a specific man over a specific woman over one garage. The other one's charge is addressed to Rick's as a breed, and there is nothing personal in it at all. And fifth, Prime was killed by Rick's hands, while the person who arranged all of it stood beside them and permitted it. Dan Harmon spoke about Prime to Variety on the day that episode aired in an interview conducted by Alison Herman. He liked the idea, and he described how it felt through the series The Wire. You learn, Harmon says, that there are different sorts of bad guys, and you enjoy watching your favorite drug dealers go up against somebody who has conclusively proved himself an untalented sociopath. And in the same place, about teams where things are not as simple and saccharine as the saying goes, put on a white hat, I will put on a white hat, let us go after the one in black. One word in that quote needs putting back. In reprints, it circulates as ruthless. In the original, it is untalented. The substitution looks minor and the accusations come out different. Ruthlessness is about scale. It concedes strength and leaves the villain his stature. Untalented takes the stature away. The show's creator said of his own villain that the man is small, and he said it on the day the villain was shown to the audience. The same thing is audible in the recorded message, an instrument the size of infinity, used so as not to record a second take. In the same interview, Harmon talks about the end of the episode, and this part is about Rick. Rick, in his words, essentially handed the leash off his own neck to somebody who is not himself because he is consciously more invested in his own destruction. I want to take that formulation apart separately because Prime's death looks like a liberation. The man who defined Rick's entire life is lying dead, and Rick removed him with his own hands. By Harmon, no liberation occurred. The leash stayed where it was. The hand on the other end changed. Who Harmon has in mind does not follow from the interview. I will only note that besides those two, there was a third person in that room, and he arranged the whole meeting. The show brought two of Rick's enemies together in one episode, and they left it differently. What Prime wanted from Rick was an admission, and he demanded it right up to his last line, conceded, "You would have become me." The other one wants nothing from Rick personally. His account is presented not to a man but to a breed, and an account like that is not closed by one death. However many you kill, the breed remains, which is why one of them died demanding an answer for himself, while for the other, in that same minute, standing beside them and permitting it was enough. Prime left the show. The other one left that episode with the schematics. Section 11. The state of affairs as of today is this. He is alive, he is in custody, and that is where the show left him. Episode 1 of Season 9 aired the 24th of May, 2026. He does not appear later in that season. Every episode from the 2nd to the 10th has been checked. The season finale, which came out the same year on the 26th of July, does not touch his thread at all. Between that appearance and the previous one, the 12th of November 2023, lie about 2.5 years, the rest of Season 7 and the whole of Season 8. Disappearing for long stretches is nothing new for him. He is not in Season 6. There he is only talked about, and talked about dismissively. The line runs, "Stop flattering that guy. His whole plan was to deliver a monologue and leave." In Season 8 he is absent entirely, and here I am obliged to name the boundary. There are no transcripts for Season 8 apart from the first episode. I could not go through it line by line, and his absence there I am taking from reference works. He is brought back through a phone. Morty takes Rick's phone off him and finds the messages. Rick's explanation is short. The man gets in touch sometimes and threatens to erase their family if Rick does not help him with his business. Morty asks directly whether Rick is working for him. Rick compares the man to an omnipotent character from Star Trek who makes him do things. The engine is named out loud in the very first scene. It is blackmail, and the explanation ends there. The hostages, meanwhile, are these. Inside the device sit 4 miniaturized copies, chibis, from a dimension described as ideal for hostage-taking. Everyone there is hyper-trusting. The Smith family is not among them, and Morty is not among them either, which is stated separately with a reason. Erasing Morty would erase himself. Morty asks the question that suggests itself to anybody who has followed this story. So the two of you, he asks, are defending the Central Finite Curve together. It is a lovely question. It folds 7 years into one figure. The man who breached the wall is now defending it. The circle has closed. The answer comes immediately and takes that figure apart. First a question back, since when does he care about anything? Then the answer itself, he does not. And then the explanation, that one of the two is simply forcing the other. Let me take apart what happened there. The formulation about a joint defense is spoken by Morty, and it holds for exactly as long as it takes to get an answer. The show does not confirm it. The verb force describes the whole construction. One side holds the other under threat and gets work out of it. The wall inside it is a side effect of somebody else's coercion. The threat to the wall this season is real though, and it is named. A creature devouring the multiverse calls itself the Collective, and about it the show says this: at some point it will reach the Central Finite Curve, and then it becomes their problem. That is the whole connection between him and any defense, and it rests on the coercion from the line before. The device he uses in this episode stops time. There are no portals here. In his words, the small time device Rick showed him he built himself, the way he once built a portal gun. It always struck him as strange that Ricks do not go in for time travel. And he adds, it is a good thing he is not a Rick. The move is the same as with the portal gun. He saw somebody else's object and built his own, and in that last half a line his whole position is hidden. He places himself outside the class he has an account against at the exact minute he admits to copying another Rick invention. He is taken by 4-dimensional time cops. The orders hands where we can see them. The notice surrounded for 1,000 years in every direction. And an aside to somebody, thanks for the tip, a lot of people freezing time these days. From that direction, just a concerned citizen, officer, and an instruction to build this kit yesterday. The tip came from Rick in advance. He foresaw that the man would stop time and told the relevant people before it happened. The line about a concerned citizen is the trace of that call. Then Rick removes the leverage, the weapon schematics. The whole blackmail rested on he places inside the device itself, and they are erased from every possible reality at once. Rick says it with relief. Now we are free of this untalented nonsense once and for all. Who exactly he files under nonsense the line does not specify. the goodbye is short and without ceremony. Thrown in his direction, you are nothing, you are less than nothing, you needed cops to win, enjoy prison. Which of those prisons says which line has not been established, so I am not naming names. Then somebody in the family asks whether Evil Morty is off the board for good, asks, and the question stays a question. Now the list of gaps. No sentence is named. The 1,000 years in the cop's line is the radius of the cordon. The formulation about an eternal sentence circulates in reference works. But that is an editorial inference, and it was drawn from a line in an entirely different episode from 2015. What is said there is about the time prison. They do in it exactly what is done in any other prison, only forever. No such sentence was passed on this character. No escape is shown and none is announced. There is no setup for a future in the episode either. What became of the 4 hostages after the device was destroyed, the show says nothing about. The threat to the wall remains, and there is nobody left to coerce Rick. That is where the season leaves the subject. The relationship with Rick is closed with a joke. No resolution is issued to it. Then there is the little that has been said outside the show. The showrunner Scott Marder, in an interview on the 25th of May, 2026, put it this way. Production has gone deep as far as season 12. He personally has the luxury of being well ahead of the audience, and there are plans for various things already in the works. The word returning is not there. The words not returning are not there either. This is said about his own production. A man is describing how much runway he has. About what happens inside the show, he says nothing here at all. Spencer Grammer, who voices Summer, said in the same conversation that she would love to see him dig his way out of prison with a spoon, and that she imagines a whole Shawshank Redemption about him. That is an actress's wish. And there is exactly one thing inside it, somebody from the production saying what she would find fun to watch. The schedule is known as follows. On the 17th of October 2024, Harmon and Marder announced at New York Comic Con a renewal for 2 seasons at once, through season 12 inclusive. Season 10 is in production, expected in 2027 with no premiere date announced. Now I move to a guess, and I am marking it as a guess. What follows is a forecast. I expect him back. My grounds are circumstantial. They left him alive. Production has gone far ahead, and the man responsible for it says there are plans. Those plans are named in general, without names. And this show has come back to him after multi-year pauses 4 times already. First after a little over 3 years, then after nearly 4, then after a bit more than 2, and finally after 2.5. As for when, I have nothing to offer. A forecast is all it will stay. There is no announcement. There is no confirming line, and I am not going to prop my own expectation up with somebody else's words. That is where the checkable part ends. Every episode he is in has been gone through. The words spoken about him out loud have been collected. The gaps have been named one by one, and over all of it hangs one question, the one this story started with and the one no plot can close, who he actually was. Let us look at what is left of everything he achieved. The hole in the wall around infinity, patched a season later, in passing. The weapon schematics he engineered the entire meeting with the main character's grandfather for, erased from every reality anyone can reach, and with them went the lever he was holding Rick by. The hostages, after the device was destroyed, not a word is said about them, and the man himself, in a cell in the 4th dimension, held by beings who have been running prisons for longer than time has existed. Now, it is worth stopping on that scene after the credits, because it says a thing this show does not usually say out loud. He asks the guards, "That is it. You are not going to put me in stasis for the whole term. Not erase my consciousness." He is asking to be switched off. They tell him that the stasis thing is actually punitive, and they ask a question that, in his case, sounds worse than any sentence. What is so bad about falling asleep? And they explain how it will really go. Mush off a tray. Big aggressive types all around. You can bulk up, but you will have to hustle for protein. He says they have their prisons set up well. They tell him, "We have had eternity to work on it." No term is named, meanwhile. Not once, not in a single word. The 1,000 years that gets said in that episode is about the cordon around the building, not about the sentence. Now let us put it together. His entire story is about getting out from under Rick, out of the position of an assistant who gets brought out for a specific job, out of the crib, as he called it himself. Every way out he opened himself with his own hands, and everyone closed behind him, quietly, in passing, with no ceremony at all. The wall was repaired in passing. The weapon was erased with one button. And the last door he asked to be let through was a request to be put to sleep, and that one they did not open. The man who went past the limits of infinity is sitting in a cell where sleeping is considered too soft a punishment. But the most uncomfortable thing in this story is not what became of him. The most uncomfortable thing is that he was never designed. A co-creator of the show described in 2017 how the decision to bring this character back was made and cut himself off halfway. He said he did not want to show how the sausage gets made, because then viewers ask, "What? You are making it up as you go?" And he finished the thought anyway. The decision was of this kind. This guy can just stay the person who ends a story like that, or you can connect the dots and go further. In the same place he named his real fear. Saying something that turns out to be either a spoiler or worse gives away that the character is not being thought about enough. The second co-creator said something simpler about that same election episode. Glad we set that up. That is how a man talks who has found a piece of groundwork that came in handy. The writer of that episode, 3 months before broadcast, described the character as an audience request. People want to know if that guy with the eyepatch is coming back. And the current showrunner said this about his own work a year ago. To lie and tell you I have a 30-year plan for this character would be impossible. Those are words about a writer's room, and they do not travel further than the room. But the room is exactly what we are discussing, and here everything converges. He was not a design, he was a debt. He was invented for one use, as a turn at the end of an episode, as an explanation for where a remote-controlled Rick came from. He said almost nothing in that episode, and in his main scene he said nothing at all. The viewers did not let him be forgotten. A critic wrote on the day it aired that he hoped this was not the last we saw of him. 3 years later, the writers came back to him. 4 years after that, they explained him, and the whole time, by their own admission, they felt like debtors. The same co-creator put it directly. Once you have made enough references, you deserve any amount of anger for not resolving the story. You played that game, and now you owe the payoff. Though the character it is customary to call the most calculated in the entire show is in fact the best proof that nothing here was calculated. And that, if you think about it, is exactly what he was saying himself. He explained that the wall was built around every universe where Rick is the smartest, that every version of them lived out every one of their lives inside one infinite crib, around one infinite baby. And he added a sentence, "The show has not contradicted once in 5 years. What makes him evil is that he got sick of Rick, and if you have ever got sick of Rick, you were evil too." That is not a villain's threat. That is a diagnosis handed to the viewer. And it is correct. We are watching a show about a man who turns out to be right for 12 years running because the author is on his side. Everybody who has ever got tired of that has been on this side of the curve in the same place as everyone else. The show invented a character to explain one plot hole, and what came out was the only character who told the audience out loud what is wrong with this story. For that, they put him in a cell where they will not let him sleep. And we are going to sleep. Good night. If you sleep well through a long breakdown like these, subscribe. I put one out regularly. See you in the next one.